It was a normal Friday afternoon at Palm Beach Zoo. A keeper walked into the Tiger Night House to prepare for a routine public talk. She never walked out. These are the moments that remind us what wild animals actually are. Not performers, not companions, not predictable. The enclosures, the protocols, the years of experience, none of it is a guarantee. A keeper can spend a decade learning an animal's every habit, every mood, every tell, and still walk into something she never sees coming. Sometimes the cameras are rolling when everything falls apart. Sometimes the footage becomes evidence. Sometimes it becomes the only record of a person's final minutes. Here are 5 of the most deadly zoo deaths caught on camera. It was April 15, 2016, a warm spring afternoon at the Palm Beach Zoo in West Palm Beach, Florida. Stacy Konwiser was 37 years old and the zoo's lead tiger keeper. She had tattoos of tiger paw prints on her foot and lower back. She knew these animals the way most people know their own neighborhood, their habits, their moods, their rhythms. That afternoon, she walked into the Tiger Night House to prepare for a scheduled tiger talk for zoo visitors. The night house held 4 cages. 3 were locked, 1 was not. The standard protocol at facilities like Palm Beach Zoo required that no keeper enter any area where an animal had access unless 2 separate safeguards were in place confirming the animal was secured elsewhere. That afternoon, at least one of those safeguards was absent. Inside that open cage was Hattie, a 13-year-old Malayan tiger weighing around 350 pounds. A placard on the cage door indicated the animal had access to the area, but inside the cage sat a large box, big enough to block the view of anyone standing at the entrance. If Hattie was resting behind it, Konwiser may never have seen him before she stepped inside. Why she entered that cage remains unanswered. Everyone police interviewed said they had no idea why she would have gone in knowing the tiger was there. Zoo officials attributed the incident to human error. Her uncle said he still had questions and doubted he would ever get full answers. 2 maintenance workers nearby heard her scream. One ran toward the sound and called out to ask if she was hurt. She screamed back, yes. When she didn't respond to his next question, he moved closer and saw the cage door was open. He saw the tiger standing over her. He saw the blood. He closed the door and called for help over the radio. Keepers came from across the zoo, including Konwiser's husband, Jeremy. They tried to lure Hattie away with meat and rats. He didn't move. He lay beside Konwiser's body and stayed there until the zoo's lead veterinarian managed to fire a tranquilizer dart. Hattie rose, walked away as the sedative took hold, and only then could medical personnel reach her. The call went out to 911 at 1:56 in the afternoon. Konwiser was pronounced dead an hour later at St. Mary's Medical Center. The autopsy found she died from bites to the neck that fractured her spine and severed several arteries, including her right jugular vein. She also had claw wounds to her chest, shoulder, and arm. Police body camera footage captured the aftermath, the chaos inside the night house, the investigation scene, the weight of what had just happened settling over the people who had worked alongside her. OSHA investigated and issued a hazard alert letter to the zoo. Because no specific federal standards directly applied to the situation, no citation could be issued. But investigators made 8 recommendations, including installing video monitoring to track tiger locations and electronic door sensors to show when animals had access to certain areas. The zoo said it didn't believe the missing safeguards had contributed to what happened. It said it had already begun implementing several of the suggested changes. Only around 300 Malayan tigers remain in the wild. Hattie was part of a breeding program. He was not destroyed. It was the first death in the zoo's 60-year history. Konwiser had worked there long enough to become the lead keeper of its most dangerous residents. She was known as someone meticulous, devoted, and deeply attached to the animals in her care. The tiger she walked in on that afternoon was, according to one of her colleagues, her favorite. It was the morning of May 24, 2013, South Lakes Wild Animal Park, a zoo near Dalton-in-Furness in Cumbria, in the northwest of England. Sarah McClay was 24 years old and had described working there as her dream job. Her mother later told an inquest jury that Sarah was a meticulous person, someone who never did anything carelessly. who always wanted to do things a little better than required. That morning, she was working in the Tiger House, a building with multiple indoor and outdoor compartments connected by lockable doors. The system was designed with one purpose: to keep animals and keepers apart at all times. A keeper would enter one section. The animal would be secured in another. The doors between them would be locked. Something went wrong. Sarah came into contact with a male Sumatran tiger. Sumatran tigers are the smallest surviving subspecies, but they are still apex predators, compact, fast, and capable of generating extraordinary force. The attack left Sarah with deep puncture wounds to her neck and body. Abrasions across her skin suggested the tiger had dragged her along the ground. She did not survive. CCTV footage of the incident became part of the subsequent investigation and was reviewed by police and prosecutors. Cumbria Constabulary said they were working to determine whether the failure that brought Sarah and the tiger together was the result of human error or a technical fault. Almost immediately, investigators found something worth examining. A defective bolt on one of the internal doors in the Tiger House was discovered shortly after the attack by police and the council's senior environmental officer. The bolt may have been damaged during the emergency response, but its condition raised questions that couldn't be easily dismissed. The zoo was prosecuted for health and safety violations. The case drew attention to the broader safety culture at South Lake's Wild Animal Park, and concerns about the facility's practices would continue to surface in the years that followed. Sarah's mother told the inquest that her daughter had never expressed any doubts about her safety at the park. She saw working with big cats as a privilege, even though she didn't have what her mother described as a particular natural affinity with them. She had built that relationship through care and consistency, not instinct. She was, by every account, exactly the kind of person you would trust in that environment. Her mother also said, without hesitation, that Sarah would not have wanted the tiger destroyed in response to her death. That request was honored. The inquest jury visited the Tiger House in person before hearing from witnesses. Staff and visitors gave evidence. The picture that emerged was of a system that had, at some point, and for reasons that were never fully settled, failed to do the one thing it existed to do. Whether a door was left unsecured, whether the bolt had been faulty before anyone arrived to investigate, whether the breakdown was procedural or mechanical, none of it was ever conclusively resolved. Zoo owner David Gill asked for understanding and prayers in the immediate aftermath. He maintained that the park was a safe environment and that no other staff or visitors had been endangered during the incident. For Sarah McClay's family, those assurances offered little comfort. South Lake's Wild Animal Park continued to operate after the prosecution, though it faced mounting regulatory scrutiny in the years that followed. The questions raised by Sarah's death about how closely private facilities were being monitored and whether the systems meant to protect keepers were being properly maintained and used did not go away quickly. She had walked into work that morning the same way she always did, ready to do her job a little better than was strictly required. Whatever failed that day, it wasn't her commitment to getting it right. She was 24 years old. It was March the 6th, 2013, Project Survival Cat Haven, a private wild animal sanctuary set in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains near Dunlap, California, about 50 miles east of Fresno. Deanna Hansen was 24 years old and 6 months into an internship at the facility. She had grown up near Seattle. She had loved lions and tigers since she was a child, and according to her father, was absolutely fearless around them. Working at Cat Haven was her dream. When the internship ended, she hoped to get a permanent job at a zoo. That morning, Hansen entered the enclosure of a 4-year-old male African lion named Couscous. She was there to clean. She went in alone. Couscous had been raised at Cat Haven since he was a cub. As a young animal, he had appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres television program, brought out as a novelty for the audience. He was familiar with people. He had grown up around them. Hansen's father said the cats at the sanctuary liked her, that she was at ease with them in a way that was obvious to anyone watching. None of that mattered when the attack began. Security cameras at the sanctuary recorded the incident. What they captured showed how quickly the situation moved beyond any possibility of intervention. A co-worker who became aware something was wrong attempted to help Hansen. By the time anyone could respond, it was already too late. Officers from the Fresno County Sheriff's Department arrived and shot Couscous in an attempt to reach her. She could not be saved. Investigators said they never determined what provoked the attack. There was no clear trigger, no obvious mistake, no moment anyone could point to and say, "That's where it went wrong." Couscous was not an animal with a history of aggression toward people. He was young, familiar with human contact, and had been around Hansen specifically for months. Whatever caused him to attack her that morning left no answer in the footage or in the physical evidence. The incident brought immediate scrutiny to Cat Haven and to private big cat facilities more broadly. California had regulations governing exotic animal ownership and care, but sanctuaries like Cat Haven occupied a space where oversight varied, and protocols were not always consistent with those at accredited zoos. The question of whether Hansen should have been alone in the enclosure and what safety systems should have prevented that became central to the aftermath. Unlike the Tiger House at South Lakes, where a separation system existed but appeared to have failed, at Cat Haven the concern was whether adequate barriers between keeper and animal had been required at all. Her father, Paul Hansen, spoke publicly about his daughter in the days following her death. He described her love for these animals as genuine and deep-rooted, not reckless. He said she was fearless around big cats in the way that comes from real knowledge, not ignorance. He believed she understood the risks. He also said she was at ease with those cats, that they liked her, and that this was plain to see. None of those things offered any explanation for what Couscous did. That absence of explanation is one of the harder truths running through cases like this one. With Stacy Konwiser, investigators could point to an open cage door and a box that blocked a keeper's sightline. With Sarah McClay, there was a defective bolt and a separation system that had broken down in some way. With Deanna Hansen, there was nothing. A young woman walked into an enclosure she had entered before, with an animal she knew, and did not walk out. The cameras recorded it. The reason for it was never found. She was 6 months into the job she had always wanted. She was 24 years old. It was the morning of May 29, 2017, shortly before the zoo opened its gates to the public for the day. Hamerton Zoo Park, a small wildlife park in Cambridgeshire, England. Rosa King was 33 years old and had worked at Hamerton for 13 years. She had helped design the zoo's new tiger enclosure between 2014 and 2016, making decisions about how it was built and how it would function. She knew the layout of that space better than almost anyone. That morning, she was inside the tiger enclosure cleaning windows. The animal sharing that space with her was Sisip, a male Malayan tiger. The zoo opened at 10 in the morning. A visitor named Frank York arrived and, at some point after entering, looked into the tiger enclosure. He saw Rosa King's body. He raised the alarm. What investigators found immediately after the attack was 2 gates and a metal vertical slide, all part of a separation system designed to keep staff and tigers in different sections of the paddock left open. 2 gates and the slide, all open at the same time. The assistant coroner for Cambridgeshire, Nicholas Moss, told the inquest jury they would need to explore how that happened and why. A police investigation found no mechanical fault with the gates or the slide. The equipment had not failed. The separation had not broken down because of a technical problem. That finding matters. At South Lakes Wild Animal Park, there had at least been a defective bolt to examine, a physical object that raised the possibility of a technical explanation. At Hamerton, investigators ruled that out. The gates and the slide were working. They were simply open when they should have been closed, and the investigation turned to why. Rosa King suffered a complete fracture of her cervical spinal cord. She had significant lacerations and abrasions to her neck, puncture wounds and lacerations to her arms and right leg. The coroner said it had been apparent from the moment she was found that she had not survived. Armed police, paramedics, and an air ambulance responded to the scene. Keepers were able to guide Sisip back into his run without further incident, and the zoo was evacuated as a precaution. Security camera footage from the park was reviewed as a part of the investigation. The footage and the physical evidence became the basis of an inquest that tried to piece together the sequence of events leading to Rosa being in the same space as the tiger. Her mother, Andrea King, told the inquest that it had been clear since Rosa was a toddler that she would work with animals. She described her daughter as knowledgeable about every animal in her care. Rosa had never raised concerns about her working conditions at the zoo, her mother said. In 13 years, not once. Zoo founder Andrew Swales testified that Rosa had been actively involved in designing the very enclosure where she was killed. She had spent 2 years on it. She understood that space in a way that went beyond daily familiarity. She had helped build it. She had shaped the decisions about how the separation system inside it would work. Hamilton Zoo Park had welcomed around 100,000 visitors the year before Rosa's death. It had operated since 1990. It was not a large institution, but it was established and well attended, the kind of place that does not typically make national news. The inquest examined who had last checked the gates, whether any procedural step had been missed, and how the sequence of open barriers had come to exist at all. The answers pointed not to broken equipment, but to something harder to trace, the kind of failure that lives in the gap between a clear protocol and the moment it isn't followed exactly. What that moment looked like inside the enclosure that morning, only the cameras recorded. Rosa King was 33 years old. It was Christmas Day, 2007, shortly after closing time at the San Francisco Zoo, a 125-acre facility on the western edge of the city. 3 young men had spent the afternoon there. Carlos Eduardo Sousa Jr. was 17 years old. With him were brothers Amritpal Dhaliwal, 19, and Kulbir Dhaliwal, 23. Witnesses reported seeing the group taunting animals that afternoon. A zoo visitor told investigators she had seen them harassing lions less than an hour before what came next. She identified Sousa as part of the group, but said he hadn't joined in the taunting himself. Amritpal Dhaliwal later admitted to police that the group had yelled and waved at Tatiana, a female Siberian tiger who had lived at the zoo since December 2005. Tatiana had a history. On December 22, 2006, veteran zookeeper Lori Komajan was feeding her through the enclosure grill when Tatiana grabbed her right arm and pulled it through, biting it hard enough to require multiple surgeries and skin grafts. The injury left Komajan's arm permanently impaired. The California Occupational Safety and Health Administration fined the zoo $18,000 for inadequate safety precautions and staff training. The tiger cage was remodeled and reopened in September 2007. 3 months later, Tatiana got out. How she escaped took investigators weeks to untangle. The zoo's initial claim was that the grotto wall surrounding her enclosure stood 20 feet tall. 2 days after the attack, officials measured it at 12.5 feet. The minimum height recommended by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums for that type of enclosure was 16 feet. The wall was nearly 4 feet shorter than the standard. Tatiana's rear paws were found embedded with concrete chips, consistent with her having pushed hard against it during the escape. She went after the 3 young men. Sousa was found near the Tiger Grotto. He was gone before help arrived. The Dhaliwal brothers fled to a zoo cafe 300 yards away. Tatiana followed. When officers arrived, they found her with Kulbir Dhaliwal and held fire, afraid of hitting him. They created a distraction. When Tatiana turned toward them, they shot her through the forehead. Toxicology reports later showed Amritpal Dhaliwal had a blood alcohol level of 0.9, twice the legal driving limit. Alcohol was present in the systems of both his brother and Sousa as well. All 3 had used cannabis. Police found a partial bottle of vodka in the car they had driven to the zoo. Zoo security guards were also enforcing a lockdown to keep Tatiana within the grounds, which slowed officers from getting to the scene. This was the first time a visitor had been killed by an escaped animal at an Association of Zoos and Aquariums member facility since the organization's founding in 1924. The zoo closed until January 3, 2008. When the tiger exhibit reopened in February 2008, the moat wall had been raised to meet the minimum recommended height. Glass fencing brought the total to 19 19 feet, and electrified wire was installed. Signs went up across the zoo reminding visitors that the animals inside were wild and that they were guests in the animals' home. In 2009, the Dhaliwal brothers settled a lawsuit against the zoo for $900,000. A separate suit filed by Sousa's family settled on undisclosed terms. The wall had been too short for years. The tiger had already shown what she was capable of. The three young men had spent the afternoon provoking her. None of those facts brought Carlos Sousa Jr. back. The San Francisco Zoo incident raised questions that the institution and the broader zoo community had been reluctant to confront directly. What happens when a facility's enclosure specifications are allowed to fall below minimum recommended standards? And who is accountable when those shortcomings contribute to a death? The zoo had been inspected and accredited, while the wall was substandard. It had passed its reviews. The accreditation system that was supposed to serve as a check on facilities like the San Francisco Zoo had not flagged the measurement discrepancy. Only after Tatiana climbed that wall and killed a teenager on Christmas afternoon did anyone measure what the barrier actually was.